Another loss for President Trump in his tax subpoena case. The president has been trying for a year to keep New York prosecutors away from his financial records. Today, a federal appeals court ruled that the Manhattan District Attorney, can obtain the president's tax records as part of a larger investigation into Trump and his business practices. NBC News investigations correspondent Tom Winter joins me now. Tom, it seems like a while since we've talked about this one with you, but we always come back to it. A three-judge panel denying the president's argument that this subpoena should be blocked. The president saying it was too broad and was politically motivated. What did the judges say about that argument?
Well, essentially, the judges today really slapped down that argument, saying, look, the crux of the president's argument, his attorney William Consovoy's argument, was this idea that the subpoena, or the investigation, I should say, is primarily focused on those 2016 hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. And the judges say, we just don't buy that on its face. That just doesn't make sense. And so if that linchpin is gone, the idea that the investigation is only centered on that, and that the investigation, as they say, grand juries typically paint with a broad brush, citing another case. They say, look, if a grand jury typically looks at a wide range of things, they're looking at a wide range of things here. It's not centered on those payments. Well, guess what? That argument doesn't hold. And so this grand jury subpoena is perfectly valid. And they also didn't find that the idea that the subpoena, Allison, is essentially a copy of a House subpoena that was served on the president and his tax preparer. They didn't think that that was necessarily a sign of bad faith or wrongdoing. And so when those two things go away, any sort of grounds that the president has to appeal this successfully, stop this subpoena from being served, go completely out the window. And that's what the judges determined today.
Tom, if your appearances on this show have taught us anything, if this past year has taught us anything, this is far from over. I am running out of fingers on one hand to count how many times this is ping-ponged around the courts. So what happens next year? How much longer could this drag out Cy Vance's fight to get those Trump's tax records?
Well, I think the good news here is, Allison, and I, as you alluded to, don't have an opportunity to say this very often, we are coming to the end of this battle because there's really only one step left. So the Supreme Court has already said, look, this idea that the president can't be served the subpoena, that's out the window. We've already dealt with that. And then they came back to the lower courts and they said, look, if there's any other reason that any other normal person, you, myself, anybody watching us could challenge this, the president can challenge on those grounds. Well, the lower courts today have said, nope, that doesn't exist. That's out of the window. So now what has to happen here is the president, there's already indications that they are going to ask the Supreme Court to take a look at this, is going to have to ask the Supreme Court to take a look at the grand jury subpoena purely on the merits. This has no constitutional separation of the executive branch from the judiciary. There's sorts of presidential privilege discussions. All of that is gone. They've got to look at just this idea of the subpoena. I think because the president's arguments and his attorney's arguments were so beaten down in the appellate courts and at the district court level that really this just doesn't have much of a chance. So at this point, the Supreme Court will decide to do either one of two things. They can say, look, we're going to hold off on this until we can hear arguments. We do want to hear arguments on this. They can actually say it's actually three things. The second thing they could say is, look, we'll hear arguments at this at some point, but you know what? There's no reason to stay this. As a matter of fact, Cy Vance, you can go ahead and you can get those tax returns and get those tax documents. You can take a look at it. If later we decide that there's something improper, we'll deal with that then. Or the third thing is they can say, you know what, there's not an issue here for the Supreme Court of the United States. We remand this down to the lower courts. And at that point, they've already decided. And so the tax documents and the tax returns from the president, from his tax preparer, Mazars USA LLC, they were the ones that actually got this subpoena in the first place, Allison. They'll have to turn that over. And at that point, the investigation continues.
Tom, it's not that we don't want to see you again, but it would be nice to get some finality here to understand what's going on and then have you back to talk about some other things. So it looks like we will at least be talking about this once more. Tom Winter, thanks so much.
Definitely. Sure thing. Thanks, Austin.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.